I think when we talked about what we love about God or we appreciate about God, I think it's realistic to know that actually our Christian faith is not a bed of roses. Like nothing in life will ever be smooth, whether you believe in God or not. But I think the difference when you are a Christian but yet go through the difficulties of life is, I think what we all mentioned also, that He is there for us and He knows us intimately, intrinsically, and all the earlies. But I think I was just curious about because our faith can't just be, at all-time high. And there will definitely be moments where we dip or like we go down and we might forget about God, or there's a distance between us and God. And I just want to ask us, was there a moment where you felt far from God? And if so, how did you come back to His, I guess in my understanding, His safety net?
Yeah. So I'll go back to the story of when I was 11, right? And I had that encounter with the Lord and things were actually good. I started growing in my faith. But at 13, I had my first love. Sorry.
So good.
I really did. And I think, and it's like young love, right? You, that person becomes your world and you start to really idolize that person and what that person can bring to you. And I'm actually really glad that I had a young love experience at such a young age, because I learned a lot from it. And so God was never far away, but I no longer looked to Him to be my source of comfort, strength, peace. I was looking to a new person. And, so we had this fling for a while. And then at 14, we broke up. So that was heartbreaking. And I remember that actually for the first time in my life, I started to seek out Christian music. Like I said, I never really connected with worship. And then at 14, I used to always just listen to whatever was on the radio. And I knew there was a Christian radio channel, but I didn't like to listen to it because it was very staticky and it was always bad reception. But somehow I started to listen to it. And one of the first worship songs I remember that came on was John McMillan. He is jealous for me.
He loves us.
How He loves us, right? Yeah. And just that line, He is jealous for me. Because I was really jealous because my first love started liking someone else. And yeah, it was really sad. But he started to like someone else and I was really jealous because I wanted that person's attention. And then when I heard that line, I was like, wow, God's jealous for me. He's been waiting this whole time to have this deep relationship with me, and I just abandoned him for some guy, some dude, some 13-year-old.
13-year-old dude.
What was I thinking? And yet, God's jealous, but His jealousy comes from such a good place, because He's looking at me going after this guy and He's like, girl, it's not gonna work out, and you're gonna waste all of your time and energy. But of course, I still learned a lot from it. I don't regret it, but the Lord is jealous for me. And so that song really started pulling me back. So what I started doing was just listening to worship music, and I started to fall in love with who Jesus was again and how much He loves me even when I ignore Him completely. And that really won my heart over. And then I started to read the Bible, seriously started to read the Bible at the age of 14. And I would pick up chapter. Actually, no, I did a lot of Bible dipping as a kid, as a teen, because I was like, I don't want to read this whole thing. So I would just go bam, what does the Lord have to say to me? Sometimes it would work and sometimes it wouldn't. I'd be like, oh Lord, how great are your works? Your thoughts are very deep. Oh, then I started to sit with verses, random things, and I would be like, oh wow, God's thoughts are very deep. Sorry, I literally just turned to that. And I would just sit with that. And I think as a teen, you start to go through more challenging experiences. And seriously, God was so good. Every time I would randomly Bible dip and flip, there would be something that would speak to my situation. And again, right, like going back to the whole thing about coincidence, when you start to open yourself up to the love of God, you realize that there's so many things that start to happen that cannot be coincidence. If it's just like happening one time, okay, but it's like constant, like what Charlotte was mentioning. You know, like her friend inviting her to church happens to be close to her birthday, happens to be when she was listening to this song. Just all these things. You start to look back and you start to realize, like, I can't deny that God does love me, because how can all of these things align so perfectly? But you're right, Charles, in that we still go through challenges. Like, we still make mistakes, or other people do things that hurt us, but yet you feel that peace. You feel that someone is anchoring you, and that's the person of Jesus.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned that it was music that drew you closer to God when you, in the first place, did not really, or like did not have a taste towards worship music specifically. The thing that brought me back to God was actually community, finding Him amongst community. And even to this day, community is one of the things that really, I would say, like sustains or like uplifts me in a church. And at a time, the moment that I felt the furthest from God was during a period of my life where I was still going through a lot of fear and anxiety. At the time, I was studying overseas. I was completely alone, and I've had these episodes before. There's this thing called death anxiety, and it's to do with anxiety, but fearing death and what will happen to you after you die. But this concept actually does not make sense for a Christian, because how can you believe in God and yet fear death at the same time? And I tried confiding in a few people, but because the few people that I confided in, they grew up Christian, so they didn't really understand what this death anxiety was that I was going through. And I also thought, yeah, I shouldn't be feeling this way, but why am I experiencing the fear and the entrapment of it? Because whenever I get an episode, right, it's very instant, it's very sudden, and I will just be paralyzed there for a good 15 minutes. I can't move. And my mind is just going on about, oh no, I'm gonna die, and I don't know what will happen to me, what will happen to my body, and it's just all these racing thoughts that will come into my mind. So it was physically, mentally impossible for me to even call out the name of God, to ask Him to get me out of it, to rescue me. It was such an entrapment that I knew that I needed God, but I couldn't get out of it to reach out to Him. Yeah, and only it is really by the grace of God. I did nothing to overcome this fear, and I overcame this fear, I think, in 2013. Okay, because I was studying overseas, right? But I had a cell group that I was still in contact with over here in Singapore. So I made sure to form like community with them, to hang out with them whenever I was back in Singapore, and then to like text them whenever I'm overseas, and also to make sure that when I'm overseas, I root myself in a church so that I don't get isolated, and I don't let anything trap me into the fear and anxiety bubble. Yeah, it's quite difficult to explain what the whole episode is really like. But I do vividly remember one day, because I used to live with housemates. They were all out. I was alone in the house by myself, and I was just on the bed there, and I couldn't move. I couldn't even, I couldn't do anything but to just wait for that feeling to just subside, and so that I could even breathe again and not think about it. I have to distract myself with other things when I'm out of that zone. So yeah, I would say that during those times was the furthest I felt from God, because it was it was impossible for me to reach out and even call him to help me, because of how I chose to value community. By his grace, I encountered him and his love during one of the sessions that we had. I used to travel down from the east all the way to NTU just to meet with the group. And there was this video that the cell leader played. I can't remember what it was, but it was something about God's love letter to us, and how he really sees us and really loves us no matter what situation we are in. So it was as though God was speaking to us, and all I had to do was just to sit there and receive it. Yeah, and after that day, I no longer have one of those episodes where I felt I couldn't move. I won't deny that the thought has been dropped into my head, but I had the strength of God to get out of it very quickly, so I don't get trapped into that zone anymore. And I have to say it's really by the grace of God, because I could not have done this by my own strength. I mean, clearly, I couldn't do it by myself. So it was really God showing up for me in that moment, and how he placed different people in my life to speak to me, show his love through them, through community. That's just, I mean, again, the beauty of God. Like he really can turn any situation around for our sakes, because he just loves us. And it's so grand, his love, but it's so humble and simple at the same time.
At your heart of it, man.
Yeah, me too. I no longer fear like dying into the unknown.
Yeah, I think for me, my one of my lowest experiences was also anxiety. It's so real, and like in the moment you know that it's just kind of irrational, but it's such a physical kind of reaction that your body has. For me, how it came out was I was in my previous job, and before this job, I'd been unemployed for about 4 months. But before my previous job before then, I had been unemployed for 7 months before. So during that 4 month unemployment, when I didn't know that if it would be 4 months or 7 months or what, I was very scared that I was telling God, you know what, I can't do this unemployment thing again. It's not good. I don't want to be stuck at home. And I just I don't know why, I just can't get jobs. Or even like freelance. So then it was really hard to send my resumes out. And then when I went for this specific job interview, I was so certain I wasn't going to get the job. I was like, wow, I cannot meet their expectations. And then they called me to offer me the job. I was like, the Lord, this is you.
The Lord is real.
Yeah, I was like, this is really God, though. I knew that we're going in. I was like, God, did you open this door for me? Because I had like a list of things that I told God, like, this is what I want in this job. And it was a very simple list. It was about my pay, and it was about, actually my pay was the main thing. And it was just like a short of the pay requirement that I had, but it was better than not having a job. And then later on, they did offer me a raise, even before my internship, my probation with them ended. They offered me a raise that was past the amount I told God that I wanted. Yeah, so it definitely broke even and like above, right? Anyway, that's not the point. The point was that over time, I think maybe it was my own spiritual maturity as well at the time. But like, I didn't really know how to apply my understanding that this job was from God with my personal emotion of the effort that I need to put at this job. So I gave like 1000%, I was really just there all the time, and I was OTing every day. I was crunching so hard, but I also always felt like I was not good enough, and I always thought like, you know what, there's nothing to stop them from firing me. Yeah, and it was not uncommon to see people disappear. Yeah, because they've been fired. So a constant thought I had was, When is it going to be my turn? And I always find an excuse like, okay, maybe it's because this is happening or this is coming out, that's why they don't want to fire me yet. And I'll give excuses for this is why I'm not fired. Yeah, instead of the truth, which is that God had placed me there and positioned me there for a reason. In fact, when I had in conversation with my ex-bosses later on, they also shared about like they felt that there was a favor that I had, and but there were certain orchestrations that happened that it really was the grace of God, that the fact that I was still there for so long, because anxiety meant that I was spiraling, and I'm very emotional as a worker, which is not very good for my employers. But it does compromise the quality of my work, yeah. And my work was so compromised at the time. But a big part of it was, I found out later on that one of the symptoms of anxiety is the ability of your mind to be able to comprehend what you are reading. So I would read a brief like 1,000 times and not understand what I'm supposed to do. And then my deadline is in like 2 hours. And like, that's just messed up, right? Like, I can't understand what I'm supposed to do, but I need to do work. So I'll just do, I have to force myself to do the work. But then I'm so scared to submit it to my boss, to send it to the client, because I know it's not good, but I also can't tell why it's not good because I just don't have that level of comprehension at that moment. Yeah, so it's such a weird biological thing, but it's also so like spiritual and emotional at the same time. Yeah, so, and I remember like all these reactions, like physical reactions of anxiety that I found later were actually anxiety attacks. Yeah, and they were also, I would like, my hand would start to shake. I would start to like black out. Like I would start to get tunnel vision. I could still see, but I would have tunnel vision, and my mind was just blank. Yeah, and like I can't respond, So what happened was that I actually got suspended for a week. Yeah, because of how bad the work was. But the fact that I got suspended is in itself a miracle.
I've never heard of work suspension.
I only thought suspension from school or things like that.
So they gave me 1 week off to go figure things out. That's a miracle in itself because I've seen people just get fired. So like, what makes me different, So I think it's really like the favor of God. It's true. And the day that I got suspended, I was actually supposed to go for this youth conference, FOPX.
Oh.
Yeah, it's literally here. That night it was at Trinity, and then so it was that year.
Oh.
Yeah, the first night was at Trinity. I used to work here. I used to work along this street, McTaggart. Yeah, so it was so near, and I couldn't even make it because I was OTing trying to rush out my work. That didn't even pass, So I told God that my inner monologue for all this time, right, months, and this was just 7 months working in there so far. My inner monologue all this time had been, God, I cannot lose this job. Yeah. And then to quote literally the Devil Wears Prada, I love my job, I love my job, I love my job. And I did love my job. I did love that I was able to grow in my skill. I loved moments with my co-workers as well. They were a really good community for me at the time. But the anxiety and the pressure of not being able to have work that was usable was very stressful and pressurizing for me. Yeah, and so the day that I got suspended, I actually told God, my narrative just switched that day, It was so interesting. I told God, you know what? Forget it. You just fire me. I can't deal with this anymore. Yeah, it's messed up. I got yelled at by my boss that week. I was just like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I have no creativity. I have nothing. I'm literally nothing. Yeah, just fire me. But if you are the one that put me here, then you have to do a miracle because I just can't do this anymore. I have no capacity to do this job anymore. And then I got suspended. And then so it was so interesting also because they gave me a 1 week suspension, and then I already applied leave the following week for my church camp. So they were like, you take the week off. I think I was still getting paid, by the way, my suspension week. It's truly favor. I tell you, it's truly favor. It's insane. 1 week, and then they say do whatever you need to do to get yourself together. Go to the library, go on Pinterest, find inspiration. And in my head, I immediately knew, I said, I just knew I need to spend time with God. This whole year I had pockets of being with God. I had also been burnt out. This was when the term burnt out started to come into mainstream society. But I was exhibiting symptoms of that because I had been serving in church every week, and I didn't know that I could say no at the time. Yeah, so I was literally serving. I served back to back there was a season 7 weeks back to back, and some Wednesdays, It was just really a lot, and no one in church knew what I was going through because I didn't even realize that I was burning out. To me, it was such a privilege to serve also, right? I was happy to serve anyway. I didn't mind it, yeah, but it was just that with everything that was going on at work also, I was also not getting enough sleep. So I had that week, I spent time with God. Before the week, I went to the conference, and then they preached about fasting. And that whole year, God had been speaking to me about fasting. And I was like, this is not a body that fasts. How am I going to fast? How am I going to survive it? I also didn't know how much I was going to survive. But that preaching about fasting, that whole day, right, before lunch, I was like, I need to fast. Went for lunch, I was like, okay lah, tonight, God, tonight. After lunch, he preached more about fasting. And he was preaching about revival, and it burned such a huge... He wasn't preaching so much about fasting as he was about revival. He was talking about revival, but I really just felt like the fire of God on me. In that whole sermon, I was crying, and I was crying throughout the sermon, and I was shaking because I felt like the fire of God was on me. And I was so convicted that cold turkey, I went on a 1 week fast, cold turkey, no solids, just juice. And I was crying in my bed every day that week because I was watching sermons at home. I was either at home watching sermons or I was out with friends, and then I was so convicted. I was so convicted that God had to do something. God was the one, that my solution. For some reason, I didn't even had the understanding yet that the reason why I had gone into anxiety was because I had put my identity in my work rather than in God who had placed me there. Yeah, and so that week happened, and no breakthrough yet lah. But it's still had a bit of fear. And then during the week, that church camp was also the one that I received healing on my voice. That session that I received healing on my voice, the guest speaker prophesied over me. And he said he saw the hand of God. In fact, I actually have an Instagram post where I put in the prophetic word because it was so powerful. I never had a word like that before. That he prophesied to me in front of the congregation. Yeah, and it spoke to everything. But there was one thing that really stood out to me at the time was he said, do not throw away your confidence. So he said, the Bible says, do not throw away your confidence. So why do you do that? He says, do not throw away your confidence, for in it there is great reward. And then he prayed, Lord, restore her confidence. I watched this a lot of times. Yeah, I rewatched it. Because there was so much that God spoke to me at the time. But one of the greatest revelations I had was when the Bible says, do not throw away your confidence, it means that it is on you you're not just releasing. The act of throwing is very intentional. So I had intentionally thrown away my confidence, whether I realized it or not. It was a very intentional act that I had not even realized that I did, to put my identity in my work and to put all my effort into saying that it is my work that will get me, that got me this job and put me through this job. When actually, I forgot that I didn't even think that I was going to get this job. And the fact that I got the job was a miracle. Yeah, and so literally when I went back to office, the work changed. So this was December, and then so I think I only worked 2 weeks in December. Yeah, I still had a lot of anxiety, so I was still falling sick that week. I was vomiting and stuff at home. But then when I was back at work, still worried, but we had a 1 week break at the end of the year, the agency closed. Then when we went back, I had such a fresh I don't know, God did something lah. I went back with such fresh eyes, and then the first week we were back, my bosses were actually still away overseas, and then we were rushing this specific project, and so every day we will send updates, and like on what has been done, and then the boss that yelled at me, yeah, texted me privately to say that she was very happy with my work that day. Yeah, and to keep it up. Yeah, and it wasn't so much about the affirmation of man, but affirmation of man is proof that God had transformed something in me. Yeah, and so like, there was still definitely ups and downs, but my anxiety has not come back the way that it did. Yeah, and something else I learned also was there is a difference between panic attacks and anxiety attacks. Panic attacks come out of nowhere. There's sometimes no trigger, and I really feel for people who get panic attacks because anxiety attacks are really bad enough. But anxiety attacks have a trigger, and I realized what my trigger was at the time, and I felt like God really showed me how to deal with it, and He even brought like at the time, like me and my colleagues, we were friendly, but we really became a community after I came back. Yeah, like we had conversations, like there were active helping, yeah, like offering to help. It wasn't like, can you help me? But it was like, do you need help? It was such a blessing. Yeah, I bonded with my colleagues that time. Like, it was so different. Yeah, God turned things around for me at the time. It was really like literal darkness, tunnel vision. Yeah, but God came through. Yeah, it was really good.
So I think with all that we have shared so far, our journey with God, our relationship with God, I just have one more final question. Is it worth it to be a Christian?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very, no regrets. I think when you I think for people who are skeptical, you just ask yourself, is there anything else in this world that can give you bona fide peace and joy and love? And what I have found in the world is that, yes, there are pockets of love, joy, and peace, but it's always conditional. There's, just as Charlotte was talking about how anxiety is triggered by something, in this world, love, joy, and peace needs a trigger, right? Like, I love someone if they love me and give me attention, and then I somehow feel loved, or I have to do something incredible so that people around me will recognize that I'm special. And then with joy, like I have to be able to solve all my problems so that I can finally feel calm. And so I love that only in Jesus have I been able to find those things in the midst of the mess, in the midst of darkness. And it doesn't make sense how you can simultaneously be experiencing trouble and at the same time this deep rest, inner rest. And that's why Jesus says that in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. And if someone out there in the world can find that for me, please, like I would love to hear. But so far I have not found that. And that's why I think that following Jesus is the best decision I've ever made.
Yeah, and I think we can all echo Jasmine's answer, and it's definitely worth it to be a Christian and to live according to God's will and way. Yeah. And okay, so I just want to thank you guys for coming today to have a heart-to-heart conversation with each other.
That was really heart-to-heart.
Yeah. And thank you for those who are watching as well. I hope you were blessed in some way. But before we end, I just want to give a shout out to the space that we are in. We are at Openfields, a creative space for entrepreneurs to hustle, create, and connect. And if you're interested in a co-working space or event space, you can check them out at openfields.sg. So, have a great day and God bless.